Good morning, everyone. Today I am making a big stock pot of vegetable soup, beef vegetable soup. I know I've done this video before, but since I've done that video, there's been some little updates on some of the different things that I've actually kind of taken out of this to make it even easier. We're going to go to the store right now. I'm going to show you hands-on the ingredients that I get for this specific soup that will last you for days of lunches to come for very cheap. It's a steep cost at first, but over the course of the next few days, you will have lunch. Nothing like beef vegetable soup for 3 or 4 days worth of lunches. So, not really sure how I'm going to do this today, but I'm taking you with me. I'm going to do a little walk and talk as we go along. Should be a lot of fun, though. Let's get to the store. Alright guys, well we made it here to Kroger. We're going to go over the different ingredients. I'm going to show you hands-on here what we get to make this huge pot of beef vegetable soup. It is absolutely delicious, nutritious, lots of different things added to this, different vegetables, of course the beef, stuff like that. We're going to go inside, check it all out. We're going to go over the different prices, what it'll be ready. Hopefully some of the stuff will be on sale. Now, a lot of this stuff we do already have, but we're going to go over it. I do have to get the beef tips and some other things as well, but a lot of this stuff we do already have for this that we've gotten either at Sam's Club or some other stores that we've had in our preps and our stockpile of things. So we're going to go in, check it out. All right, so the first thing you will need for this recipe is I get the Kroger corn. Any frozen corn will do. You want to make sure you get 12 ounces of each though. 12-ounce thing of corn. Green beans and peas, they are $1.25 here at Kroger. Next on the list, you want to make sure you get a 64-ounce container of V8. You can use store brand, but I have since switched back to V8 because I think it adds a little more flavor. Just really good. Luckily, I already have this though, as this is $4.99. I stocked up on a couple of these when they were on sale a while back. That's why we always talk about stocking up on the sales as you see them. Now, probably the most important part of this meal is going to be the beef. Choice beef for stew. Now, you want to get this one right here. I do have to get this. It's about 1 1/3 pounds, about 1.31 pounds here. You want it to just be under a pound. You can cook up to 1.5 pounds. You want it to be a little more than a pound, but what we're going to do, we're going to cut these pieces up when we get home later. So just wanted to show this is about the perfect size right here. You can go up to about 1.5 pounds, but I wouldn't go any higher than that. Now most of you know that we are always well stocked on Ritz crackers, and I always make sure we get a deal on these. They do have the family size, part of this buy 3 or more, all mix and match going on at Kroger this week. But you know, that's why we always, like I said, we always stock up on these things because you don't want to have to pay $4.29. Now, you don't necessarily need this unless you like crackers. You don't have to get Ritz. That's just our favorite. Also included in this recipe, you want to make sure that you get 1 can here. 1 can of Swanson beef broth. The only reason why I say Swanson is because it's what I always use. Always use 1 can. That is the exact size that you're going to need. And then, like I said, you can use store brand and be a little bit cheaper. This is something I have to get, and unfortunately, it is not on sale. It is $1.30 for a can, but this is the good stuff, guys. I don't know why that won't focus. There it is, right there. Okay, so we are adding these little teeny tiny noodles by DeCecco here. They're a little pricey. We do have some, but I'm going to go ahead and buy another box. You need about half. Need about half of this box for this recipe here, but they are the acini di pepe, little pastinis, as my mom calls them. I don't know, I guess they just don't call them anymore. They might be a little different. They're the little tiny ball noodles there. But this is key, guys. This helps soak it up a little bit, add a filler, makes the soup go a longer way. Crackers will do the same, but we always like to add this in here. So DeCecco, the acini di pepe, they are $2.99, basically $1.50 for each soup that you make. You don't want to use all of these, or that's all you will have is noodles. About half the box, maybe even a little less. I also wanted to point out that don't worry about best if used by dates on these. Look at that. April 11th, 2027. So you have years that this can sit here and be good to go. You will need a can of tomato sauce, and if you're doing it this week, you can get Hunt's here on the buy 5 or more, get them for 99 cents. We used to use the Kroger tomato sauce, but now we get the Members Mark tomato sauce. You get them for less than $1 a can at Sam's Club, but Kroger is just as good. Members Mark is actually, it kind of reminds me of Kroger, but Hunt's is always good. Always good to stock up on these canned tomato products anyway when they're this cheap. One awesome thing to have too, to soak up some of those fine juices when you're ready to eat, is this nice, Jessica loves this Italian loaf from Kroger here. I believe they're on sale too, $2 down from $2.49. Really good stuff. You can smell it. That is pretty fresh baked. All right, well, we got everything we needed. We're gonna start heading back home. I think I said before that we're going to do the slow cook. No, this one is not the slow cook. I was thinking of my other meal that I make, which is like a massive fresh vegetable meal that I slow cook all day. This one's a little different. This one doesn't, it probably takes about an hour total, or maybe a little better. We'll go over that. I kind of eyeball some stuff, but we'll go over that. One thing I wanted to mention while I was thinking about it though, those little pastinis are the Acina di Pepe by DeCecco, those little teeny tiny ball noodles. That has become one of our favorites, and that is something that I have not talked about in adding that to our, because we did a video on this a couple years ago where we added celery and stuff like that. This one, we take the celery out of it. We don't add that step, and also most of you know Jessica doesn't really care much for fresh onion. Those are a couple things that you could add to this if you wanted to. Dice up some celery and maybe dice up an onion. If you do onion, I would dice it up very thin. I actually like big chunks of vegetables. I like chunks of onion and celery, but we don't put that in there anymore. But it is something you could add to that. And I will kind of talk about that at like the specific time if you want to add those items into this. But this is specifically what me and Jess do now. But those little noodles, I also wanted to mention that for the longest time, stores weren't getting those in. It was an ingredient thing, and I could not find those for like a couple years. So I always try to stock up on them when I find them. We were actually down to our last box. I'm gonna try and wait till we find them on sale, but really for $1.50 because you only want to use half. So at $1.50 for what's gonna make your meal absolutely amazing, I don't think that's really that bad of a deal. Plus you're getting a lot of meals out of this meal. So anyway, we're gonna head home, fire up the oven. I almost said fire up the grill. I guess you could do a grill, but it might not be very efficient. So fire up the stove, and we're gonna get this thing cooking. Okay, so it's been about 15 minutes here. I actually turned it down a little bit because it was boiling. Our stove gets really hot, so we had to turn it down a little bit. It was boiling pretty heavy. Don't need to boil it that heavy. Now we're gonna empty the meat into the colander here. We're going to turn the water on cold while we do that. Okay, we got our meat in there. Now we're going to pour, leave the stove on, just leave it on, and just start pouring your 64-ounce thing of V8 juice into your pot. Now you want to add your can of tomato sauce. In this case, we have Members Mark. You can use Kroger, whatever tomato sauce you like. It's a pretty good one right here. Directly after that, you need to add your can of Swanson beef broth. Then you're going to add the meat back in. It's just that easy. Okay, so everything is in there. If you're going to add celery, if you do it like we did it before and cut up the stalks of celery, Jessica's not a fan of celery, so what I used to do is I'd take big stalks, cook that in there at this time. But we don't really do that anymore. We don't add celery because we do add the frozen green beans, which kind of gives it that earthy taste, green taste, real fresh taste. I am going to turn this back up a little bit though since we have more stuff, but I'm going to keep it kind of just under a medium high because you want it to come back to a boil And once it comes back to a boil, it's about 15 minutes. I'm going to give the times of everything. It was 15 minutes from the time I put the beef in, boiled the beef, and then emptied it into the colander here. Then I added the other ingredients with the stove still on. And now we're going to bring it up to a boil, and it should be about another 15-20 minutes, and then we'll add the other stuff. Also, this is a time where if you want to add onion, if you want to dice up an onion, this is the time to put that in as well. If you are doing celery and you want celery in the soup, then I would dice the celery up pretty thin to keep it in there, like little tiny chunks if you like, the celery and the onion. But we don't add those, so we're just going over specifically what we do. So I like to add those other things though, because I know a lot of people like celery and onion. This would be the time to add that as well. And if you do add celery and onion, you may want to add like maybe an extra 5 or 10 minutes of the cooking time from when we go now. But this is going to come to a boil, and once it comes to the boil, that's when I'm going to start counting down 15 minutes. So probably about 20 minutes total after this step. And just to secure the heat a little bit, I have my lid here, but I don't put it on all the way because I like it to kind of aerate through. It does have the little hole there, which that's what that is for, but I like to still tilt it a little bit. Do it however you wish, but I don't know. I feel like it keeps the heat in, but you want it to kind of like aerate as you go along. Okay, so it's been 15 minutes. You can see it is still boiling. We've got all the bags cut. You do want to keep these frozen to the point to where you add them in here. There's all the corn. Here we got the peas. All the peas. And here we got the green beans. And I do feel like, because we didn't used to add green beans, but since we took out the celery, I feel like it helps a little bit kind of get that fresh green taste. Give it a little stir there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to let this come back to a boil. But when it comes back to a boil, that's when we're going to add the little pastinis or Acina di Pepe by DiCecco. Probably take an extra 5 minutes for this to come back to boil, and then once it does, you put in the little noodles, and then you let it boil for about 10 more minutes, and then it's done. All right, so it has come back up to a boil. I have half a box of DiCecco little noodles here. Pour them in. Now, one thing you do want to do, get my spoon here. One thing you do want to do is you want to make sure that you, for a little bit, you want to stir them so they don't stick to the bottom there. You want to kind of like go at the bottom there and kind of just stir it around for a little while. Give it another minute. You might want to stay by the stove while you're doing this part. But right after this came to a boil, put the half a box of the Acina di Pepe by DiCecco. Pastinis, as I like to call them. That's what my mom and grandma have always called them. Just kind of flip them around there. You just want to make sure they don't stick to the bottom. And then I kind of just give it a minute. Put the lid back on it here, let it go for a minute, and then I'll take that off like every 30-40 seconds and give it a stir. Want to do this for about 10 minutes. Alright guys, here is the finished product. As you can see, it is piping hot. Got the beef right there. Everything is cooked to perfection. It did take about 15 minutes for the noodles. You do want to check, make sure the noodles are bright white and not a dark tint. You want to make sure the noodles are done. Again, once it came to a boil, I did stir it about every 45 seconds or so, and it did take about 15 minutes. So just wanted to mention that there. Let's eat. What a meal, guys. That is absolutely delicious. Feel free to let us know down in the comments any things you may do differently. Let's get a lot of different vegetable soup recipes on here. Anything that you would add. Maybe you add carrots. One thing I've done in the past is I'll add, like, instead of the different vegetables, I would add frozen mixed vegetables. Don't care too much for the carrots in it, but I know a lot of people would like that. But really, I would just do 2 bags of mixed vegetables. Me and Jess did kind of say this time that the green beans were a little overkill. There was a little too much green beans, but usually I feel like there's not that many, but happy bonus. I do love green beans. But I'll tell you what, guys, It's a great meal. It's all done within a little over an hour. I'm going to quickly go through the different ingredients with you again. So it is the 64-ounce container of V8. I use the original. You could use the low sodium. You could use low sodium with any of these. That's just what I use. A 15 to 16 ounces of beef broth. Doesn't really matter what it is. Get the best deal. They do actually have the digital coupon going on right now at Kroger for the 32-ounce container of Swanson broth for $1.49. That's a good deal. And get you a can of tomato sauce, a 15 to 16 ounce can. And then we got the 3 bags of Kroger vegetables. I always use Kroger vegetables. They've never failed me. Yes, they're $1.25, but they're always fantastic. Sometimes you can get them on sale, which we were down to the last couple things of corn. So I did have to buy the green beans and the peas. So those were $1.25 a piece. And then I'll tell you what, the bread really goes good with it. The Italian loaf bread, obviously you can get that anywhere. Kroger does a great job, though, on their bakery. Meijer does, too. Meijer Bakery is really good. And I know Publix Bakery is really good as well. Let's see. So, believe that's it. Again, I know earlier in the video when I was talking about cutting the celery like this big, if you've been around on the channel for a while, you remember the way I used to do it. We would cut big stalks of celery. The reason why I did that is so that I could pull the celery out but still cook it in with the soup. It does give it that celery, open, fresh flavor to it. But I do feel like adding the green beans now instead of that is good because Jessica doesn't really care for the celery. So, but you can always add onion, different things. Let's go over the times real quick because it was a little different than I initially said. I think it depends on just how you're cooking it, really. Okay, so you want to start off with a pretty decent sized pot. As you guys saw, I use my stock pot. And I boil the water. Okay, I get the water to a boil. Then I put the meat in. Jessica did cut up the meat. We had some family over and stuff, so Jessica was kind of busy with them. But we had she cut up the meat. I would say less than half an inch. You want to make sure each piece of meat is about less than half an inch. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just don't want like some big, huge pieces in there. So about a half inch is about as big as you want to go. Also, make sure that for what we're cooking in the size amount, you want to make sure that it's 1.5 pounds or less. Probably like a little less. Like I got 1.3 pounds. That was perfect. Once it was boiling, I cooked that for about 15 minutes, the meat, while stirring it a couple times. And then I put the meat in the colander while leaving the stove on. That's when I put the V8 juice, the beef broth, and the can of tomato sauce in there while the stove was still on. Okay? And then adding the meat back into it. So all of that, you want that to get back up to a boil while stirring it a little bit. But once that gets back up to a boil, which took about 5 minutes, that is when, I let it cook for about 10 more minutes. About 10 minutes after it gets back up to a light boil, not a very hard boil, okay? And then after that, then you want to add your frozen. That's another thing you guys might remember too. We used to use cans. I don't use cans in the vegetable soup anymore. I use frozen. Okay, so we put the bag of the frozen peas, corn, green beans, and then let that come to a boil. As soon as that comes to a boil, then we put the half a box of those DiCecco pastinis, the little noodles, Genie to pay. I'm tired, guys. It is late. And then after that, yes, you do want to stir it like once a minute, just a little stir so that the noodles don't, as soon as you pour it in too, those noodles are going to want to stick to the bottom of the stock pot. So you want to make sure that you stir it a little bit, maybe a little extra at first, then kind of put the lid how I showed you to do it, kind of like so it aerates, put it a little sideways, and then take it off, stir it like every minute for about 10 to 15 minutes. It did take us about 15 minutes. You want to make sure that those noodles look puffy and that they're all white. If they don't look all white, because I know they look white at first, but when you put them in, they'll have like this clear tint to them. You want to make sure that that is gone. And then once they start puffing up a little bit and look all white, then it's done. And then you just want to stir it. When you turn it off too, I stir it, and you'll notice it'll actually start to congeal together a little bit. It'll start to thicken up. Thicken up. Congeal's a bad word. Thicken up some. So, and then that's done at that point. You turn it off, let the boil come down, let it sit for about maybe another 5-10 minutes. So about total time from starting cooking, from the first boil, putting the meat in till the end, maybe about an hour and 20 minutes. Hour 15, hour and 20 minutes, but an hour and 15 minutes of your time, and we're going to have soup for days, guys. I mean, we've got little packs of them for, I think, 5 of them for each of us. So that's 10 little Ziploc container meals. Or, no, I'm sorry, there was 8 of them. 8 of them, because I had a couple bowls. Jess had a bowl. And, I mean, we got enough for the next, like, 4 or 5 days. So Jessica probably won't eat one, so I'll probably have soup for the next week. But, guys, I'll tell you what. Total price, if we didn't have some of these things, would have been around $28. Most of that price is the meat. Could be a little less. I was going by the full prices that we were seeing at Kroger with nothing really on sale. And for $28, even at $28, yes, that's more than what we used to pay for it, but still not too bad of a deal. The fact that I'm going to have lunch for the next week of some good, hearty beef vegetable soup. Absolutely delicious. Give it a shot. Give it a try. It is definitely worth it. You know, if you got the little Ziploc containers, that's what we use. Sometimes when you're freezing them, you want to use glass. Or, you know, you can use the plastic containers. It's just, you kind of want to be careful with some of those, like with the lids and everything. But we actually have like thick, solid glass containers, which you can leave out, put in the fridge, and let that thaw overnight, which is another way of doing that too. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for joining me. This was a lot of fun. Wanted to do a cooking video. I knew I was going to be making soup today. I actually talked about it in our coffee rant video the other day. And I was thinking, you know what? We kind of do it a little differently. So I wanted to show how we do it today. It's quick. It's easy. It's healthy. It's nutritious. It is very good. And I was happy you guys were able to join us today. Thank you all so much. With all that being said, I'm out. And always remember, the adventure is out there.